Thank you, Firkins. It's such a delight to be with all of you today. And just as Firkins mentioned, I'll just say a very brief word about Shalem, and then we'll move into the teaching. Really, really honored to be the teacher for the first sit for the Shalem Affinity Sit. And so that sit is designed specifically for individuals living with disability, chronic illness, chronic pain. If that is something that you have lived experience with directly, then this is a sit for you, and we would be so honored to practice with you. So, very much looking forward to that on August 20th. So, we are at a really interesting calendrical point, and those of you who have sat with me before know that I think quite a bit about the calendar. And I know that coming up in the Shofar project, there will be some work around this book that I'm going to mention now called This is Real and You Are Completely Unprepared by Rabbi Alan Liu of blessed memory, which in circles that many of us are in has become a classic for preparing for the high holidays. And this book takes us from Tisha B'Av, which we just observed on Sunday, through Sukkot. And Rabbi Liu offers a lot of teaching and deep work around how to be in this time. I want to particularly mention where we are calendrically because that will directly impact our practice today. So, where I am in the world, and I'm so grateful that we are a global community, where I am physically located, um, we are a few hours away from Shabbat. And this Shabbat has a particular name associated with it. It's called Shabbat Nachamu. Nachamu means comfort. And that has to do with the opening line of the Haftarah portion. So the Haftarah portion is a portion from the prophets, from the very extensive collection of prophets in the Hebrew Bible and the Tanakh. And this week we read chapter 40 of the book of Yeshayahu, of the book of Isaiah. And the opening verse of that chapter is Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. Comfort, comfort my people. That's where this Shabbat gets its name. And it is the first of seven Shabbatot of what is known as Nachemta, consolation, leading us until Rosh Hashanah. Simultaneously, because of how the calendar worked out this year in 5786, tomorrow is Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av, which is known as the Jewish Day of Love. Some people have likened it to Valentine's Day. I think that that's a little bit too facile of a comparison, but it is a day on the Jewish calendar to think about love and all of its permutations and expressions. It was understood, according to the Talmud, to be one of the two happiest days of the year, Tu B'Av, and this may surprise some of you, Yom Kippur are the two happiest days on the calendar. And I think it's really interesting to think about the juxtaposition, maybe not even the juxtaposition, but the connection between Shabbat Nachamu on the one hand and Tu B'Av on the other, happening simultaneously this Shabbat. I know that for myself in my own practice in these past many months, finding some kind of comfort or consolation has felt almost impossible, right? How does one find comfort in a world that is so deeply troubled? And we just had a beautiful moment of prayer before this, a beautiful moment of time to drop into all of that. Because that's part of what practice is. It doesn't allow us to turn away, it actually allows us to turn towards and to be deeply present. And in the Shabbat reflection this morning from Rabbi Fagelson from IJS, he talks a lot about that's what mindfulness does. It allows us to really be with our present moment experience, which is something that I have found particularly powerful. So, as we think about that and really touch into that present moment experience, invite us into a practice that will kind of help us bridge between Shabbat Nachamu and Tu B'Av and find a way to relate to this calendrical occurrence. This is a cultivation practice. Some of you may have done this with me before. It's one of my favorite practices in the sense that it really does allow us to cultivate a felt sense of belovedness. And I'm going to be guiding it for a little bit, but I'll be doing so in a broad way because I want to really emphasize that being beloved and feeling beloved can mean lots of different things. And there's no one way that any of us accesses that. Our practice is going to be particularly focused on cultivation of that felt sense. But I want to invite you, as always, when we practice, to practice within your own window of tolerance, to never engage in practice that's beyond that. So, to be very aware of what you need in this moment, and to remind ourselves that when the mind wanders, as it inevitably will, and as we will do in a moment, we're going to establish our anchor that we're going to work with in practice before we start actually working with the practice itself. And this will allow us to help us return to that anchor when we need to. So, with that, I want to now guide us. I want to start us to actually move into formal practice. So, if you aren't already in a posture that you can sustain for the next 12 or so minutes of practice, I want to invite you into that now. Whether that's sitting down on a cushion or a chair, whether that's standing up or lying down, whatever your body needs in this moment to ground. And I want to invite us into a couple of very brief grounding practices before we get started. So, wherever you physically are right now, I want to invite you, if it's available, to just notice the contact between your feet and the ground beneath you. Noticing how gravity is doing its work, holding us up, and the miracle of that we're being held by the ground beneath us. Noticing the contact between your body and the surface it's on, chair or the floor, wherever you may be, noticing the sensation of your body contacting the chair, your seat and the chair cushion or your meditation cushion, the feeling of your hands on your lap, noticing those grounding sensations, noticing where your body is in this moment. And finally, as part of our grounding, I want to invite us into 3 deep breaths together. We'll do an inhale through the nose, and then an exhalation fully through the mouth, noticing the feel of the air leaving the lungs. We'll inhale again, and an exhalation through the mouth. And finally, a third time, inhaling through the nose and exhaling fully through the mouth. Noticing the air leaving the lungs, noticing the rise and fall of the belly. I want to invite you as we move into practice. You might want, as a supportive gesture, you could place a hand on the heart and a hand on the belly, as I am doing now, if that feels supportive, or notice the placement of your hands. Find a supportive place for them because that really does support practice. And you may also want to put a little bit of a smile on your face, just a small one, because that too can really support practice. I want to now just invite us quickly to establish our anchor. You may already work with one, the breath or sound or sensation, whatever is steady and stable and will allow you to return when the mind wanders. So, as I indicated, we will be doing for the next 12 minutes or so cultivation practice that I have been taught as a belovedness practice. So, the invitation as you begin to settle into practice is to bring to mind a being of some kind, could be a person, an animal, a plant, something imagined, maybe even inanimate, that has expressed care towards you in some way. And what's really key here is that we aren't going for the person that you are in the closest loving relationship with or someone in an inner circle, but someone who's just behaved kindly, shown care in some way towards you in the last however length of time, maybe week, maybe month, maybe day, someone that you can call to mind. And as you call this person to mind in some way, notice the different aspects of them, right? Notice what the felt sense of being in their presence is like. Notice what kind of sensory information you're receiving about them. The invitation really is to focus on the felt sense of being in that person's presence in your mind. And as you conjure this being or person or imagined being, just allowing yourself to rest in their presence, really fully immersing yourself in that sense of caring, in that sense of just wanting the best for you. It could be a really small gesture, but just an act of human caring. I want to invite you now to repeat this practice a second time, bringing another person, animal, plant, imagined being, inanimate being to mind, as you did with the first. Allowing yourself to fully be immersed in the presence of that being. Just notice the luminousness there, the lightness, perhaps. Now you're invited, holding these first two beings, to bring a third being to mind if that's available for you. Noticing here again what the felt sense is like of being in that being's presence. And I'll also say, if there isn't a third, that's fine. Just be with whomever you've brought to mind already. When I do this practice, I can't always think of three immediately. Sometimes I'm just with one at a time. That's okay too. Noticing the felt sense of being in that being's presence. What arises there? What do you have access to there? In our remaining few minutes of practice, I want to now invite you into two options. And this is one of the beautiful things about cultivation practice is that we can take these with us, as is true with all practice. But you're welcome to even bring this into your Shabbat practice, into the rest of your Friday afternoon or evening or morning. And the options are the following. You can either stay with this practice and continue to bring different beings to mind, or if you would like, imagining those who are in your mind. And again, if that includes animals or plants, which sometimes in my practice it does as well, if you can get imaginative here, imagine them either saying words to you of care and comfort, whatever you need to hear, or somehow communicating that same sentiment. What is it that you would most like to hear or receive in this moment from these cultivated beings and this cultivated sense of care? We will rest here now for the next 3 or so minutes, and I will verbally let us know when we will be returning to the full space, the full group again. I want to invite you now in your own time to move from formal practice to relational practice back to our main Zoom space together. We have a beautiful opportunity now for what we call seamless practice, which means that the practice doesn't stop, it just shifts as we move from our individual practice together in community to a recitation of Kaddish Yatom, and then on to some Q&A. I want to turn it back over to Frikens and thank you so much for for your practice today.
Lauren, the thanks are ours. That was a beautiful practice and so restorative. As Lauren said, we continue our practice with a recitation of Kaddish for those among us who are mourning. I invite those who are in mourning, please, to share in the chat those you are remembering. And we invite everyone to unmute and to join in so we can all hear one another as we say Kaddish together. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Yit Gadol, Kadash,
Kadash, Shemei Rabba, Yama, Dibra, Kirite, V'Amelech, Malchute, Tarchon of Yonachon, V'Yeda Kobet Yisrael, Kala B'Zman Karila, Amen. Shmei Rabba V'Rav, Amen Leah. Yitbarach, V'Yishtabach, Yitpa'ar, V'Yit'amar, V'Yinaseh, V'Yitadar, V'Yitadar, Shmei Birchata v'shirata v'shbechata v'machata Amiram b'yamim Yishlama Rabba Mishamaya b'chayim Aseh Shalom Yaseh Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael
Shalom Abba Min Shemaya, Imalenu ve'al Kol Yisrael v'yitrayu, Amen. Aseh Shalom V'Yomama, Aseh Shalom ve'al Kol Yisrael v'Kol Yoshvei Tevel v'Yimru, Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Those of you who might have to leave us now, thank you so much for being here. And I hope many of you can stay for questions and discussion with Lauren. Questions about the beautiful teaching, which was really filled me up, took me unexpected places. Questions about practice in general, questions about her work. Someone saying, thank you for this beautiful practice and teaching. Yeah, Shabbat Shalom. So if people have questions, I do while we're waiting. This is really, I have a little piece of paper. This is really not so much on your practice, which I loved. I found myself in a very hot shower getting beautifully comforted and emotionally regulated and all these things that the world tries to make askew in my life. And I thought, yes, I need to be in this shower. It's such a good friend to me. But you said, and maybe other people know this, but I actually haven't heard this, that Yom Kippur is did you say Yom Kippur is considered one of the happiest days of the year?
Mm-hmm.
Can
Yeah.
you say more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Yom Kippur, right, as I noted, that might be really surprising to folks, right? But in the Talmud, Yom Kippur is referred to as one of the two happiest days of the year because Yom Kippur is an opportunity for a major spiritual reset. And there is incredible joy in that. And that actually Yom Kippur is, yes, on the one hand, very much, I mean, this is how I'm especially coming into our next year. I'm already sort of thinking about the high holidays, and apologies to anybody if you're not ready to hear those words yet. But, thinking about the high holidays, and particularly with the couple of years that we've had, what is Yom Kippur, right? And part of what Yom Kippur is this time for individual and collective introspection. Absolutely. We have a lot of that in the liturgy. Um, Yom Kippur is also an incredible opportunity for a spiritual reset. That cannot happen without that first piece, right? So the first piece is the collective and individual introspection, right? And that can be really hard. We humans do not enjoy that work, which is why our tradition gives us a very long on ramp. And then after you've done that work, right? After we've all done that work in some way for the year, then there's this opportunity for this like reset. And when the temple stood, the Kohen Gadol, I've been doing a lot of teaching on this recently. The Kohen Gadol had this incredibly elaborate ritual on Yom Kippur, which was existentially crucial because the people in the temple courtyard were not sure what would happen. And so part of the joy of Yom Kippur arises when the high priest emerges from the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Holy of Holies, and is uninjured. Because the Holy of Holies is the most sacred spot. It's the only time that the high priest is allowed in there is on Yom Kippur. The only person allowed in there is the high priest on Yom Kippur. And so when the high priest emerges from that experience, okay, in some way, I'm always really intrigued to know, outwardly the high priest seems to be okay, but I'm really curious about the inner landscape. But be that as it may, the people down below are like, okay, things are going to be okay. But we actually know from practice that we never know if things are going to be okay. And so ritual kind of helps us orient ourselves to that truth, but that there's joy in the possibility of renewal in the new year.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Lauren. I wanted to just share a couple of things. I ended up in a hot shower. I think I might have next ended up with a cup of coffee. I took you at your word to inanimate objects. Alon, I held a departed non-Jewish coworker, my father and my Rebbe of nearly 40 years in my mind. It was incredibly moving to picture them in conversation with each other. That's really beautiful. Sarah shares, I like to think of the young women dancing on Tu B'Av in the evening after Yom Kippur is over. So people, please, if you have questions or share what you found comfort in. It was really, really helpful for me, Lauren, I will say. I've been feeling very, I'm not sure the word, bereft, defeated, struggling with all that's happening in the world, happening in Israel, happening in Gaza. And it was such an important practice a place that you brought us to remember we're not alone, that we are beloved, and that there are things that can comfort us, even in the midst of this brokenness, and how important that is, how important that work is to remember that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to name that I am also deeply, deeply heartbroken in this time. Also experiencing feelings of defeat, feelings of deep, as I was saying to my spiritual director the other day, I feel deeply disoriented in my own tradition sometimes. And what does that mean? We are at a time that is so massive that none of us can do it alone. We don't know what the future's going to be. I know that there are many, many questions that keep me up, many questions that I notice arising in my practice. And so cultivation, I've had a particular affinity for cultivation practices for a long time. And I'm finding that particularly now they're really important because I And this is hard, but I think it's really important to be honest and say that I'm coming to a place where I recognize that, we talk a lot, I think, in mindfulness spaces about the untrained mind or the uncultivated mind. And like the human mind is, as we all know, having our own human minds, the human mind is a wild place. And the more you sit with it, right, the more you're actually in that place with the mind, you're like, oh my goodness, I did not know I could go there, but I can go there. And so I think that we have really important skills that are crucial in this time for learning how to work with ourselves internally so that we can affect the world in positive ways externally. These are parallel things. These are not one or the other. I profoundly believe that they have to happen in parallel. And that if we aren't working on our own practice and our own way of showing up relationally with the people closest to us, then we're not going to be able to have an impact in this extraordinarily fractured and broken world. And that practice is a tool that I have found in my personal life to be tremendously helpful. It's not just about being in practice formally, it's about the informal practice. That's why I invited us to think about seamless practice, because these aren't tools that we just use because we want to feel better. There are certainly times when like really lovely feelings arise, and that's great, that's wonderful. But meditation isn't only about calming us down, it's actually about regulation, it's about restoration, it's about clarity and insight, which come when we sit, in my experience. And I know that we are a people that, and I am very much part of this, and I was very much conditioned into this. We are a people who excel at words, right? The book of Torah that we're learning now, we're in now, is Devarim, words. We excel. We have a comfort place there for so many reasons. There's a lot of comfort for not all of us, for sure. I want to be clear. I want to be clear to say that, but there is a sense of like ease that some of us have in that place of word and that place of discourse. And so practice actually really invites us out of that, not to try to empty our minds of thoughts, because that's what minds do. They think. There's a lot of mental activity that can arise, but it invites us to get really clear and to get really crisp about it. And as I was saying the other day to somebody, I'm trying to remove the chorus of 1,000 voices so that I can sit with my own heartbreak and my own wonderings and deep question. And it's hard to get there when there are many, many other voices in the mind at the same time. So practice can really help us get very clear. And that clarity is not easy. It's heartbreaking work. It is absolutely heartbreaking work. But it is also the thing that keeps me going, is remembering that, I heard the word recently, the notion of Jewish history as a lachrymose thing, which lachrymose is apparently a really rare word to use, but it's this notion of like, basically, we are people that's experienced so much pain and difficulty and tragedy, and like that's just how it will be. But the question that I really want to invite us into is, where is our agency, and how can we be agents of change for our people and all peoples in the world? And when we can get really clear with our own questions, with our own wonderings, when we can really sit with that, and it's really hard because it's scary and overwhelming, but even a 5-minute practice a day makes a difference. So I want to just give us all that invitation that this isn't just about calmness and presencing. It's far deeper than that.
Lauren, your teaching is so wise and so needed, your Torah. There's some wonderful comments here. I really encourage everyone to read a lot of these these comments. I'm not going to be able to get through them all. Lauren, you called the practice today Nachamu, is that correct? Which is the name of the Shabbat?
So I was comparing, I didn't specifically, this practice that I led today is a belovedness practice, but I was connecting it to Shabbat Nachum.
Yes, because about comfort my people.
Yes.
There's some wonderful comments here, and there is a question about love at this time and how to feel and practice it when so much pain is being caused to so many by world leaders, the dweller of the Oval Office, ICE, and those who seem incapable of kindness towards other. That's really what you were speaking to before, how important it is to do this practice for just those reasons. Yes.
I mean, yeah, we are at a time of just heartbreaking decisions being made by those in positions of power in the world. Really heartbreaking and really just like I don't even have the words anymore to describe my feelings about it. And that's again why this practice is so important because what are the ways in which I can show up? Like, I try to get really clear, and part of that happens through practice. Because, as I said, and as I'll say again, these things are parallel, right? We work inwardly so that we can work outwardly. Like, it's not one or the other. I do a lot of work around spiritual practice through social justice activists. So, that's a big part of the work that I do. And you can't do these things. I mean, one can, many people frankly do, but I think it's really important not to do these things separately. They have to be part and parcel, right, of what it means to be a well-rounded, really grounded person, however your change making happens in the world. And what are the ways in which we, as people who are carrying so much within our own selves, when we were able to cultivate that feeling of love for another person or another being or an animate object, whatever it is, it's a lot easier to show that outwardly. And I say this from personal experience. I know what it is personally to be really dehumanized. So I'm not saying this as somebody this is not an abstract. I had a and I won't go into it, of course, now, but I had a really dehumanizing experience a couple of weeks ago. And it was absolutely devastating to recognize in that moment how quickly people dehumanize each other. Just like it was almost like a switch went on in this person, and I ceased to be a human being, right? Which is absolutely devastating. But it made me wonder as I sat with it, and it was not okay, right? Let's be really clear. And I am doing things externally to bring this to account. So again, to say again, these are parallel things, the inward and the outward, the inner and the outer. And what was so interesting to me in that moment was just how quickly it is possible for us to do this to each other. And so when we engage in these cultivation practices, we are relearning how to humanize because it's a skill, right? Our tradition insists on it because it's a skill that we have to constantly practice. And I want to encourage us to constantly practice it. And when we don't, our culture actually conditions us towards dehumanization. So these practices are a countercultural way of retraining our mind.
Thank you. Lauren, thank you. I want to suggest to everyone here that you can save the chat, which is rich. And Harry, can you save the chat for Lauren and for me?
Yes, please. That would be great.
So you go where the chat is, you go up to the 3 dots at the very top, and you click those, and it will pop up a little thing that says Save Chat. If you have any issues and you can't save it, but it's those three dots at the very top of the chat sidebar. Just write to support and we'll make sure that people can get it. It's rich, it's beautiful. There's so much shared here, and many thanks to you. Lauren, thank you. I bow to you and I thank you, and we all do. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. See you on Monday.